So why would I take you at face value now when just 4 months ago, Dan Bongino's on his channel saying, trust me, there's something to this Butler assassination attempt. Trust me, this Epstein stuff's garbage. And now you're saying, no, dude, trust me, bro, none of it's garbage.
One of the other things I'm interested in at the moment, and something that's been trending, is the whole Epstein files. That whole dilemma that's going on there, because obviously we had Pam Bondi giving out the dossier, which looked like pretty much nothing to all of these right-wing influencers, and they were saying, oh, it's crazy. What we've discovered is unbelievable. It's going to blow your minds. It's sickening. And then we've got Kash Patel and Dan Bongino coming out this week, just recently, saying that they think that he offed himself. They think that he did it himself. And it's just confusing to me because it seems, I mean, it seems pretty unlikely that he did that and that the cameras weren't working, etc. And some people even are doubting now that Epstein's even dead. But anyways, that's going into tinfoil hat sort of.
It's all right. We like
territory.
tinfoils here.
Yeah. But so I don't even know what is going on with this anymore. Are they trying to cover it up? Do you think that Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and these guys have seen something that we don't know, and they seem sure of it, that he actually offed himself? But it doesn't seem likely to me.
Well, so first off, let's start with Pam Bondi. I was not thrilled with the Pam Bondi pick in the first place. I had all sorts of reasons to be skeptical. Comments that she made about like the importance of moving on from going after corruption at the FBI. I'm a single issue voter, and that's outing corruption. If I was put in Pam Bondi's position, day one, I'd have been like, we are completely and totally disbanding the FBI. No one that ever worked here will be allowed to work in any sort of public capacity again. And the people at the top level were immediately opening an investigation and prosecuting any crimes to the fullest extent of the law. But that's just me, and no one was going to run on that promise. So, Kash Patel seemed a little better. He was more interested, and he has a personal motive, which I think is good, which is they came after me. So I liked the Kash Patel pick more. So Pam Bondi, I've been skeptical of. The spectacle of, I've seen some scary stuff, I'm going to release it tomorrow, and then this PR stunt of giving it to all these conservative influencers that then, put it on their Instagram feeds or anything. Not that I dislike all those influencers, but nonetheless, it was a joke. And then Pam Bondi, like, trying to post talk, be like, oh, it's not my fault, the FBI hid stuff. You said that you read stuff that was damaging personally. So don't lie now. And by the way, where is all that stuff then all of a sudden you were going to release? Now instead, the one thing that they say, even Bongino, he's like, well, what we're going to release first is video evidence that Epstein offed himself. Now, wait a minute. First, I didn't think there was any video evidence. I thought the cameras were down. Second, look at what they say very carefully. They say video evidence that he was alone at the time that he did this. Now, what that suggests to me is the act itself is not on video, but more that, I saw Tucker Carlson talk about this previously, where he was talking about Bill Barr said the cameras that were facing outside the little area that Epstein was in were on. And Barr said no one came in. But the obvious answer would be, well, someone that was already there could have taken him out. Maybe it was one of the two guards that allegedly fell asleep at the exact same time while cameras happened to go up. Maybe it was another inmate that they left one of those cells open and he went in. I don't know. It could entirely be that there was a huge amount of coincidences and Kash Patel and Bongino thought, yeah, this is garbage. And then they have seen some sort of evidence and they're like, oh, actually, this is what happened. But my answer to, because I saw Bongino saying, give us time, blah, blah, blah. First question is, why is the first thing you're releasing this tape as opposed to, I don't know, some of the evidence of the high, powerful people that maybe were involved in some of these crimes in the first place? That seems to be more important to me. So why are you selectively, releasing the thing that's designed to, okay, trust us, there's nothing to see here? And the other question is, why can't you understand why we wouldn't believe you? It's not that I personally dislike Dan Bongino or Kash Patel. It's that my entire life we've been told, yeah, there's corruption and we're going to get to the bottom of it. And it never happens. So why would I take you at face value now when just 4 months ago, Dan Bongino's on his channel saying, trust me, there's something to this Butler assassination attempt. Trust me, this Epstein stuff's garbage. And now you're saying, no, dude, trust me, bro, none of it's garbage. So they could be telling the truth. My gut feeling suggests that they're getting a half picture themselves and they don't have evidence. And either one, they believe what they're saying, and it may or may not be true, or second, that they realize the implications of what's on these tapes and what this would mean if Epstein didn't off himself are that either Trump himself, which I don't think is the case, has some sort of implication with Epstein, or what I think is more likely, allies of our country and powerful people in our country would be negatively impacted, and they think that the consequences of that would be more important than being truthful with the American people. Either way, I don't care. I want to see the truth. And if that truth is, look, things have been blown way out of proportion. Yeah, there was some really crappy stuff going on with Epstein, but the vast bulk of the people that flew on that plane didn't do anything wrong. It was just these one or two people. So we didn't want to release names to embarrass them because they'd have been unfairly smeared. Maybe that's the case, but we deserve as a country to know that truth because faith in our institutions have been shaken so much. The only recipe for fixing that is full transparency. And I really don't care if that implicates Trump or Trump's best friend or Trump's family. I don't care. I think that the nature of what these alleged crimes are so heinous and done by the most powerful people in our world that we need to get to the bottom of this almost a priori to anything else. And the other thing is, with all the issues I talk about, like I'll talk about corruption at the FBI covering up for the Bidens or covering up for the Clintons or USAID and how their color revolution's going on across the world. I try to explain to my neighbor who's like a farmer this stuff. And he's just like, yeah, whatever, dude, I got work, right? But you know what he understands? He understands the Epstein allegations. That's easy for every person to understand. Powerful people abusing the most vulnerable of our society. That's a narrative that's easy to digest. And if you could crack into that narrative and you could convince the average person in this country and around the world, this is how heinous some of our world leaders are, I think that that's a great first step in breaking the trust and this sort of implicit, oh, everything's okay nature that most normies have. So that to me is why this issue is so important to get to the bottom of it. Let the chips fall where they may. I want to see the truth. I am highly skeptical that we'll ever get anywhere close to seeing the truth, though.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. And also about just the part where Kash Patel and Dan Bongino have gotten into the office and potentially the men in the black suits have come and said to them, listen, I know you guys are interested in this whole Epstein thing, but if this does get the lid blown off it, then some seriously important people are going down and we have to kind of put this to the side. I think that that's probably the most likely thing because, you know, it's pretty, there's a lot of evidence out there that Epstein was actually working with the Mossad.
Yep.
And that he was working with the Israelis and that they're our closest ally or whatever they call them. And that if this whole thing was blown off, then it would just uncover a massive wormhole of deep state corruption that actually implicates everybody and not just the Democrats.
Well, not just Mossad. I mean, let's take that at face value, that Mossad was actually Epstein was a Mossad agent. Think of the implications of that our greatest ally was intentionally allowing children to be abused by powerful people around the world to exploit. That's as heinous as you could get. That, in many ways, is worse than anything we're told that Hamas has done. Not that I like Hamas, screw them too. But that would be earth-shattering, right? And with all the influence that Israel has, that's certainly something that they would push, tooth and nail to make sure it wasn't released. There's other potentials as well, though. I mean, there's credible evidence, and it seems likely that maybe Prince Andrew was up to some stuff. Does the British royal family want that being exposed? Now, they are seen largely as figureheads, but probably that would implicate other actual politicians in the UK as well. So look what it does with that relationship. And there's no reason to believe that powerful, financial people, Bill Gates is supposedly implicated as someone who may have done something. By the way, this is all alleged. And I want to be clear here for a second. Not only do I not have any proof that any of the groups I talked about did any of this wrongdoing, but there is also truth to the fact that just because you went to that island does not mean you knew what was going on or that you engaged in it. Now, if you went dozens of times, clearly you probably owe people an explanation. But I mean, it's not to branch too far here, but it's the same with the Diddy parties. Like if you just showed up to a Diddy party one time and got drunk and, saw strippers and was like, well, hey, thanks so much, Diddy, I'm heading home. I don't think that means that you necessarily were in the bedroom with underagers or with people that were drugged against their will. So there is a fine line here. But I think that it's clear that in general, there were powerful people. And there's certainly connections that it seems like that Epstein's family had to sort of Israeli intelligence. That doesn't mean that 100% Mossad was doing it, but it would be easy to see how many powerful people in governments, if any of these are remotely true, would be like, under no circumstances could that be released. So I don't know what it is. And I guess there's also a possibility that there's just no evidence that shows anything. And that this has just been something that they don't want to talk about because, better, like the JFK stuff, better to just leave it die in a hole and 70 years from now we'll release a couple pieces of paper and say, there it is, that's all we have now. But it sucks, and I think that it's one area of criticism for the Trump administration as a whole right now. The way that Pam Bondi originally handled this was a joke. It was a slap in the face to anyone who wanted to get to the truth of this. And I'm not particularly fond of, I'm fine if Kosh Patel and Bongino really believe that Epstein did it, but the way that this is being done, just trust us, bro, and we're going to release this tape of Epstein not offing himself first, as opposed to all the other evidence, I think that that's absurd. Once more, it's a slap in the face to people that have been told by some of these very people, like Bongino, that some of the world's most powerful are implicated in this. And once more, just like with the case of Ghislaine Maxwell, there were some people who were clients, but we're never going to find out who they were. So until we start to get those answers, I think you could rightfully criticize the Trump administration and Pam Bondi specifically.
Yeah, it all seems very fishy to me, and particularly when you also look at the 300,000 children that have gone missing in the United States that have come across the border from places like Venezuela and Guatemala and places like this. I mean, have you seen much of Ryan Matter's work and the documentaries that he's done tracking these like hundreds and thousands of children who have gone missing under the United States watch?
I have not seen, I've seen little snippets, but I haven't watched any of them fully. But it's incredibly disturbing. I was just watching testimony today of a woman who I believe was with Border Control or with ICE, and she had made this comment that there was a particular house that she was warning about, or a particular like address, where they had sent something like 362 children. And none of them were able to be, like, their whereabouts were unknown. And she brings this to attention to all of her superiors in the Biden administration, and they did nothing. They kept sending dozens of kids to this location. What's the possible explanation for what's going on here? And the flippancy of the same people that screamed about kids in cages that all of a sudden don't care that we had not only millions of people that were unvetted coming here illegally, but untold numbers of children that everybody just shrugs their shoulders and is like, oh, well, who knows what's happening to them? And then when you connect that to stories like the Epstein story, not that there's a direct connection, but when you understand the evil that's out there in the world and how these powerful people can exploit and go after children in that manner, it starts to paint a really grim picture. And the fact that there's not a lot of curiosity, and I understand why not, it's almost too horrible to think about. It's easier to think about, who had that baggie of drugs, in the Capitol. We know it was Hunter. We know that dude had the old nose candy. That's easier to, you could kind of joke around about. This stuff's morbid. It turns your stomach in knots. And so I understand people's hesitancy to look at it, but don't we owe that to children, regardless if they're Americans or not, that they were brought to this country and we dropped the ball, and maybe some of the most powerful in this country intentionally allowed this to occur. So it's gut-wrenching. I'll have to check out more of his work, but from what I've seen, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, thanks, Miss D, for the $8, and smash that like button, indeed, guys. Not one step back. Yeah, so I mean, that's just the one thing that I can never really look past. It's like, taxes and tariffs are one thing, and political tribalism is one thing. But when there's something as heinous as that is happening, and there's this evidence coming out about the trafficking of children, it's like if any president, it should be at top of the agenda, because you probably couldn't think of anything more heinous that could possibly happen. I mean, children, it's just, but I think we'd have to have more evidence, I guess, that it's actually being facilitated in some way by people in the higher ups. But anyways, off of that,
I'll say this real quick, just on that point. Like, I don't know how much Trump personally knows. Let's assume for a second that Trump's just like, hey, I got a lot in my plate. If it's true that so many powerful people were connected to this, that would probably implicate people that on the right and the left in the United States. So maybe no one's just really bringing it to his attention. So that's always a possibility, that it's just like, look, this affects people on all sides. It's the sort of old chestnut, like, why is it that we know that there's insider trading going on with like people in Congress? Like, there's credible allegations of someone like Nancy Pelosi. So why doesn't like Republicans say, hey, we're going after you? Well, probably because there's people on the Republican side doing it too. So it's just sort of like, we're just all going to keep quiet about this. And maybe that's true of the people around Trump. And Trump, Trump's a deal maker. I don't know how much he's scratching the surface of something like that. He might just be like, yeah, whatever, my people will take care of it. So I don't know what the explanation, but you're right. I think more needs to be done about it.